What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today, I'm going to talk to you and teach you so you can be paying attention to what's going on about how white racism, modern white racism, is accelerating the ascension of Africa, accelerating the rise of Africa, because white racism is inherently stupid, even though they think it's a great idea. You know, to them, it seems like a beautiful idea, very simplistic. But in fact, it is the thing that has accelerated Africa's rise and African people global rise. And I'll explain how. You see, when America decides it wants to become enclosed, right? When America decides that it wants to make America great again, right? Which means make America great for white men again back in the 50s and beforehand, when white men could do any manner of anything and get away with it because there was absolutely no one to hold them accountable. That's what Donald Trump was talking about when he was like, I don't know why people are upset. We were men of our time, so molesting children is just something we used to do on a regular basis. Beating our women and making them second-class citizens is just something we used to do back in the day. Enslaving and abusing and harassing and terrorizing Africans is just something we used to do back in the day, because white men used to be omnipotent, you know, after World War II, when they was able to do anything because there was no other white man that's going to do anything about it, because they were also doing it too, i.e. Jeffrey Epstein. All right. And that's why they don't want that list, because this is during a time where there are many white people who had many islands with many young children doing many things. You understand? So white supremacy in America, right, is so stupid, right, that it overrides the moderate white supremacy. See, there was a moderate white supremacy, right? Moderate meaning we're gonna dominate, but we're gonna do it in a smart, strategic way. We're gonna use our foreign policy to just curtail the world to our will, right? But when you want to implement legitimate neo-Nazi white supremacy policies, what that does, it closes America off from the rest of the world. See, when Donald Trump, when he eliminated and dismantled the USAID was the soft power, okay, that America used to control the world. USAID was the drugs that America used to infuse and get other countries high off America limitless money, because, you know, we print that shit out, right? It ain't nothing. We print out some goddamn money. So USAID was how they would go into Africa and keep certain politicians, keep them loyal to America. The same thing APAC does when it comes to America, right? The same thing USAID did, America would do when it goes to Africa. It will throw a bunch of money at politicians, right? Hey, here's a bunch of money. Do this. Here's a bunch of money. Give me access to this land here. Here's a bunch of money. Do not implement these policies that benefit your country. Here's a bunch of money. Give me all your engineers out of your colleges. Just send them. We'll give them a visa. No worries. Here's a bunch of money. Don't develop your nations. We'll do it eventually, right? Here's a bunch of money. Work with me. We'll give you weapons, but we want to manipulate your politics. That's how USAID works. Now, USAID does a lot of good things, right? But USAID was the apparatus at which the CIA and various corporate hitmen could get through to manipulate and do all the little evil shit in the back doors that a lot of USAID were not doing, right? It's called soft power. Soft power is more important than hard power. Hard power is just blowing shit up, right? Soft power is where it's at. So America destroyed its soft power. So what does that do? All right, what that does is it takes a politician, and they didn't just do this with Africa. They did this with Asia. They do it with Europe. They do it with America does it with all other countries except for Israel. Israel is the one that runs America, all right? Because they do it to us. All right, somehow with our own money. They do it to us with our own money. That's the crazy shit, because they ain't got shit till we give it to them, and then they give it back to us. Whatever, right? So what happens is these politicians in these African countries, like I say, include Asia, but we're African, so we're talking about Africa. These politicians live in high on the hog. getting all this free money not to do shit. The same way farmers in the middle of America get paid lots of money not to grow reasonable crops for America, but to grow crops that go for gasoline and ethanol and things like that. The same reason the government pays our farmers in America not to grow crops. They do the same thing overseas. You see, I got to use domestic policies to explain foreign policy, right? So in turn, African countries and African prime ministers and African presidents and African governors and African mayors, because America does business not just with heads of state, but with governors, individual mayors of individual towns and individual states on an individual basis in other countries. So, for instance, a president and his delegation can do business with a governor of a country in a particular state. Doesn't necessarily have to be with the federal government or the overall ruling government. It can be with just the individual governor. And corruption can be that thick, that deep up in there, right? But what happens when you take all that away? What happens when you take that free money away? When you take that drug, when you pull that drug out, let's say for Africa's sake, is weed, right? When you smoking weed, it makes you lazy. You may pontificate about all the things you could do if you weren't being lazy, but it makes you lazy, relaxed, content. You're not very confrontational. You're just like, And that's the posture a lot of African companies have been having, like they've been high of weed, that American stuff, that top shelf American strain weed, right? But what happened was Donald Trump said, you know what? We're going to keep all our own stuff. We ain't giving it up nobody. Yeah, we're going to keep it all by power, right? So now African countries who you smoking that top shelf American weed, they ain't got it no more. So a couple days pass, they get the jitters, they get a little irritated, you know what I'm saying? Because now shit ain't so smooth. Now they can't just throw money at their constituents when it's come time to vote, right? To say, hey, vote for me, here's some money, here's a bag of rice, here's this, here's that. Now they can't take credit for the money they done got from U.S. aid to develop certain small little projects within their states or towns to make the people feel good about them. Oh, this is a good government. Oh, this is a good mayor. Right now they can't do that. Now they can't use that money to create businesses utilizing their own children somehow. That's why their children become rich, because they use government money, right? And then they give the contract, to their children somehow, right? And then rehire their own citizens who got trained in America, especially, to run these corporations, and they all become billionaires, millionaires, and all that shit, right? Now all that shit's gone. So what happens when the body is off of weed for a couple days, right? Like I said, it has its pains because it has to come back to reality. It's no longer being manipulated. It's no longer warped. Its reality is no longer warped. Now it's going to have to deal with the body as it is. It has to deal with the situation as it is, right? And then on that third day, when all that good old-fashioned top-shelf American THC done got out of the system, now he's 100% sober. So now African countries were 100% sober. Oh, shit. And then they realize they got 24 hours in a day, and they can do all kind of shit. They got all kind of time. They can be all kind of productive. And then they get excited about the fact that they no longer feel this thing of laziness. They got a little bit more aggression in them because now their testosterone, the red blood cells are pumping right. White blood cells are pumping right. Everything's going the same speed. Now it's like, shit, all that stuff I was pontificating when I was high, I'm about to do that shit right now. So all of a sudden, Africans become very productive. And there's no economic hitman in the country to try to manipulate the situation, because guess what? USAID's not over there. So those people don't got vehicles to be over there. They got no reason to be over there. These white folks that used to infiltrate African countries via government programs are not over there because there's no government program for them to have an excuse to go over there. You get what I'm saying? Right? So now African countries are forced, right? They're forced to do something. They're forced to adapt, just like anybody adapts when things change. And then they realize, okay, so America says we don't want all these black folks. We don't want all these Africans, because white racism says they're all on the replacement theory, right? They think it's some magical white Jewish person who they call globalist. Anytime you hear white people say globalist, they're saying Jew. Understand? Anytime you hear them say George Soros, they're saying Jew. That's their code. Just like when they say woke, that's code for black. All right. When they say trans, that's just code for I want to say black, but I can't say black because I already said black like several times, so I got to say something else. So we're going to say trans. When I would say liberal, we're going to say people who are not white, people who are not racist. That's what that means. I'm just trying to break the code down to you. All right. So when you got these African countries no longer getting aid, all right, so they're not getting high, and then their citizens, right, they're really intelligent ones that can't seem to find a good job or don't have the foundation to start businesses within their country because America makes it so sweet. Everybody wants to run to America or run to any other Western country, and all Western countries backed by the fact that America prints out money, right? So happenstance is really just America, right? So because of that, now all those super intelligent Africans who wanted to escape and go to America to utilize their brain power because there was no infrastructure within their country to for them to do or to flex their talent, now they have nowhere to go. And then on top of that, you got the ones that's already in the West that's being kicked out and deported by ICE, because ICE, being a policing group that white racism have given more money to them than the military, recruiting retarded, stupid local police officers that have zero training, right, and giving them federal jobs. And that's why you see all these fat, middle-aged white people with masks. All of a sudden, they can wear masks. They couldn't wear masks back when the pandemic was there because it was killing them because of the CO2, even though nurses have been wearing masks for 20 years straight, every day, 8, 9, 16 hours a day. But these supposed manly supreme white men couldn't wear the goddamn mask, and they were so tripping out about the goddamn mask. But all suddenly they can all wear masks now because they really need those masks, right? So because you got these white supremacists, all the little minions, the ones that they don't have shit, but the federal government gave them a couple biscuits, and they're now here having a good ass time deporting all the intellectual people of the country. And also that means all intellectual people of the country who are being deported from colleges, that's being snatched up from businesses, that school administrators being snatched up for one reason or another. Guess what? They got to go home. What do you think is going to happen when all these super intelligent, Western educated individuals go back to the countries that they're from? What do you think they're going to do for a living? They're going to do one of two things. They're either going to add to the infrastructure that's already there and make it stronger, make it more efficient, right? Make it more capable, or they're going to start their own businesses and make it more and make it more they're going to make it more modern, right? So that forces development. That forces African countries to develop, which they already been doing. African countries, ever since Donald Trump came down those golden steps, right, and destroyed Africa's ability to conduct its foreign policy with its soft power and its moderate racism. Ever since they've done that, Africa has had the ability to breathe because they weren't being constantly attacked by moderate racists who moderately went in there and moderately controlled the world via America's foreign policy. Since we have no professionals, and like, this is the benefit of white supremacy right now. We have no professionals at all in the White House. We have ideologues who just, these Christian evangelical neo-Nazis who their only thing on their mind is saving the white race and keeping America for white people, even though there's not enough white people. So it's like, you building this building for who? Not for you, because there ain't enough of y'all. By the time building finish, y'all shit, there ain't gonna be enough of y'all, right? So now African countries are rising. Have you ever, now for an example, have you ever seen African countries talk shit to America? No, you have not. But now African countries are talking shit to America. Why? Because they're not scared no more. What you gonna do? Take money away? You already did it. What you gonna do? Take foreign policy away? What you already did it. You can't invade us. You see, here's the thing. The soft power that America has done America has built up West Africa's military. West Africa has a significant military. And keep in mind, West Africa has population, meaning they have a large military. They have capable weapons, right? That is not what y'all think it used to be. It's not what it used to be. So African countries have become extremely powerful. You see, when I was in Afghanistan, as powerful as we are, yeah, we killed a whole bunch of people. Yeah, you can't beat us kill for kill, right? You know, you can't do that, right? But one thing about American military is full with African soldiers. And what did America do? America deterred African people from being in the military. We're the best thing that they ever had, right? Oh, you know what the military is also full of? Latino soldiers. Well, yeah, but y'all deterring that. So now Latinos, right, are being deterred from joining the military. Right? So now you just have a white, mainly little white military, right? Which is not going to be as effective when going up against black people with the same weapons. All right. So African countries, Africans have developed militarily wise. Their corporate wise, they've developed, right? Their corporation becoming stronger. And you see African countries also realize, hey, there are other countries we can do business with. Not just America. You cut us off, guess what? There are other countries that need the resources Africa has, and they're willing to do business. These are the countries that you never hear about because they got the word stand at the end of it. These are the countries, the European countries you never hear about because they're not part of the white Western power structure of Europe. They're the second-class European countries that you never hear about. These are the so-called Arab countries that you never hear about because they're not currently being attacked by America right now, right? These are the Asian countries you never hear about because there's more Asian countries than just China and Japan. And on top of that, China and Japan. And you see, white Western world has been trying to convince African Americans and Africans in the media that, hey, Chinese are colonizing Africa. They want African people to believe that Chinese are our economic enemies and they're going to do the same thing that white people do. But that's not what Chinese do. The Chinese, they may have, like I said, they got their criminals in their countries that come and exploit Africa, right? But there's also African businessmen in China exploiting China, all right? But remember who controls the media? Mr. J. So they're going to always only show the criminal Chinese people in Africa exploiting Africans and doing bad things. When it comes to international business, there's always going to be a bunch of bad apples, right? But most of the works that being done is good. It's fair business. Why? Because China doesn't have an adversarial posture towards Africa. China knows strategically if we develop Africa in turn for resources, we will take away influence of America because America doesn't develop Africa in exchange for resources. America takes resources and tries to manipulate foreign policy to keep Africa and its countries where it is so that Europe can continue to manipulate and take away resources, pennies on a dime. But China is willing to put their money where their mouth is and develop infrastructure, one, making it easier for China to get goods out of Africa, and giving Africa something to where they can use and say, you know what, I like doing business with you Chinese people. Boom, because China, they don't have resources. They need it. So if Africa ever develops a posture of, you know what, fuck everybody, then everybody's fucked. You got to understand that. Once Africa says fuck you, that's it for everybody. Listen, those bombs and bullets and magnificent death machines Europeans make, they have an expiration date. They don't work forever. Even to maintain them, you need special minerals and things like that. You see? And if you don't maintain them, they expire faster. You see who have all that? Who has all that? Africa. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the West has all these magnificent weapons if they can't maintain those weapons, which they can't because they have to pay full price now in Africa. And Africa is doing just as much. I know a lot of y'all are not paying attention to what's happening in Africa because most people don't watch regular news. Most people don't, because news is boring. You know, progress is boring, right? But progress nonetheless is happening, right? So Africa, because they don't have the free, drugs of America's printed out money, they're making deals with all these other countries, bilateral deals without America. I mean, America's not sitting in the room when individual African countries, individual African governors of African states are doing business with individual states and other Asian countries, or individual heads of states are doing business with individual heads of states. You understand? There's lots of business being had, lots of new connections being created, lots of money being made. And when America gets a competent president, hopefully in 2028, this was going to happen. America's going to try to turn that soft power back on. But the thing is, Africa has already weaned itself off. It's been forced, white supremacy forced them to go a little faster, right? So when America comes with its posture, hey, we'll give you this if you give this, if you do this. And oh, by the way, we want to manipulate your foreign policy. We want to manipulate your domestic policy. Africa's gonna be like, no, we don't need you anymore. As a matter of fact, how about you go away, come back with a deal that makes sense, and then maybe we can do a deal. Maybe we can do a deal. Maybe if we can't do equal and fair exchange, then we can't do business. So that means America's foreign policy is going to be forced to change. America is going to have to prostrate to Africa. America is going to have a softer posture towards Africa if it wants to survive. Because right now, all European countries are trying to figure out how to survive. Even Europe right now. Europe, all right? See, I used the example of weed for Africa. Let me use the example of crack cocaine for Europe. You see, Europe was living off that good old-fashioned American crack cocaine process, all right? That good shit, all right? For a very long time. So now, because of white supremacy, American white supremacy, which is bigger and more robust than regular European white supremacy, because the white supremacists in America believe they are better white supremacists and more supreme than the weak white people of Europe, right? Plus, the big bad white supremacist America believe it's because of America that Europe even has white supremacy, because without America, Europe can't do shit, which is true. Europe can't even protect itself without America. Europe countries are only developed because America giving it that big brother protection. But with white supremacy in America says, fuck Europe. So now Europe is facing a situation to where not only, like France and the rest of them, they no longer are able to steal resources from Africa, because Africa already said, fuck you, Europe, you ain't getting shit. What the fuck you gonna do about it? Nothing? That's right, bitch. What? Right? So now Europe, they ain't got shit to flex. What they gonna do? They can't do shit. Half their military is filled with the same Africans that they wanna oppress. What they gonna do? Most of their doctors are filled with those same Africans they want to oppress. Most of their engineers are filled with those same doctors they want to oppress. The Africans that they have oppressed have infiltrated their countries and infiltrated inside their government apparatus and structure so much, they can only do but so much. So now that they're not getting that, now how do they survive? Because they can't get all that free resources. Now they realize they don't got shit. They don't got the means of production. They don't got the means to make all that money that they tricked all their citizens into believing that their country was so great that they can make. They don't got none of that shit no more, right? So now they gotta make their own money. They gotta cook their own food. They gotta wash their own dishes. What the hell? And then they got Russia over here, who they don't consider white, even though they are white, but they like Asiatic white, who's looking to fuck them up. This is a perfect opportunity for Russia to destroy and destroy Europe, the rest of Western Europe. And you know what Russia's doing? They say, yeah, we're gonna do deals with Africa too. We're going to make sure Africa don't need nothing from you guys. We're going to help them develop nuclear power and all that shit. We're going to give them drones, top quality planes, top quality weapons. China's like, yeah, we're going to give them top quality planes, top quality technology, top quality infrastructure. That way there's nothing the white Western world can dangle over Africa. In all Africa, all they have to do is do square business. That's how you defeat the West. China and Russia is going to defeat the West by simply doing square business with Africa. And that's all Africans ever wanted. You ever realize you ever notice how strong the African Americans are? Because America's foreign policy is the same domestic policy they have with African Americans. That's why I always say African Americans are a nation of itself. We are a nation within a nation. America's foreign policy and America's policy towards African Americans are the same thing. Have you ever noticed how African Americans are so resilient? Why do you think that is? Why do you think we're more resilient and our same counterparts to white Europeans are not resilient and they're having a hard goddamn time while we're still just living, dancing, singing, and having a good time and surviving like we always been? It's because we always been like this. We've always been off the teat, right? We have not been able to benefit because the only way we can benefit is if we give an arm and a leg to the same white government. The white government of America has never given us the opportunities they've given white Americans. We've always had to think outside the box. We always had to operate from our from within ourselves. We always had to lift ourselves up from our own bootstraps because they wouldn't give us no boots. Matter of fact, they would take our boots. That's why we're so resilient and strong right now. That's why African American farmers are having a better go at it right now, while white farmers are losing their goddamn minds. It's because we're already used to it. We've already adapted. And that's a black thing. Because we are the oldest group of people on the planet. We've been here for millions of years. We're used to adapting to change. It's the other groups that's having issues. So you could just look from within how the world, how the white Western government, the moderate racism, the overt racism, the covert racism of America has treated African Americans, and you'll see how they're treating Africans. You understand? It's the same policy because they view us, white people, even though we're here and we built the country, they view us as foreign We've never been American. We've always been a foreign. We were never meant to be here. We were never meant to still be here. We were meant to build and create money, but we were meant to be manipulated. We were a tool. We weren't meant to have agency, right? So, because of this extreme, dumb administration, they have sped up and accelerated black excellence. Because all we're going to do is do what we've been doing for thousands of years. We've just modified what we do. We adapt and we thrive. So I'm going to make sure I show y'all this rise, because y'all going to miss it. It's happening so fast, y'all going to be missing. I got other videos coming. Just so you, for the record, y'all can see Africa's rising. All right. While everybody, all them other black people, so-called, you know, pro-black, they talking about bullshit. I'm talking about the real shit. All right. Anyway, y'all tell me what y'all think about this in the comment section. This is Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach them. I'm out.